Card games are pretty hot right now. It feels like everybody's reverted to their primordial virgin selves and picked up Magic the Gathering again. Only it's every single indie RPG instead of overpriced paper. Card-based RPGs have had quite the history, but you know where Wikipedia is, and it's a trustworthy source. To my knowledge, one of the first, if not the first, in video game format was the Dragon Ball series, and I want to go 7 balls deep in this bizarre subgenre, which ran all the way up to the Nintendo DS. Dragon Ball Daimou Fukkatsu for the Famicon was the first, and it's an incredibly linear, stripped-back version of what was to come. You followed a straight path using card values as your movement range and did battle with throwaway foes to increase battle power, which correlated to stats. There was a visual novel, almost puzzle element to the non-battle maps, where you had to deduce the correct sequence of events to progress. This involved speaking to characters, speaking to yourself about characters, and navigating intangible locales using vague approximations of directions. In West City, I had to repeatedly speak to Lunch until she told me to break down a wall, revealing a sewer tunnel, after which I game overed because blasting a sluice gate with a Kamehameha saw Goku drown. Rest in peace, little fella. Dragon Ball 3 Gokuuden, also for the Famicon, is up next, and it's much the same as the former title, though visually a bit more robust. The map isn't strictly linear and features branching paths and events displayed in a board game style instead of a straight dotted line. Combat's way fancier and presents as a sequence of manga-like panels whenever an attack is initiated, which gives the illusion of almost movement. It also received a WonderSwan remake of sorts years later, which is a note I have made. I don't want to talk about them any further than that. I'm going to evoke a fan-favourite pastime and skip Dragon Ball entirely. They're a little too restrictive to achieve anything, but there was a bunch of follow-up games which are fascinating. Taking place during the Saiyan saga with a pinch of garlic to taste, narrative events are modest in length, but the gameplay is indulgent. While there are only 7 main maps, completed by moving from one end to the other, and the actual narrative events are resolved in a matter of text boxes, the amount of grinding required is excessive. Much like the former game, movement occurs on a grid and is based on card values, but this title overlays the grid on expansive world maps. The newfound freedom of heading in any direction brings with it some issues, largely how long it takes to move anywhere. You take control of 2 characters in the early maps and move them independently, which flat out doubles movement time and provides no real benefit as it's easy to lose encounters, and if you're not within one panel of your bud, they'll be absent from combat, making it even easier. There's a lot of collective grinding required at the start to ensure your warriors don't die to various assortments of Cybermen or filler Saiyans. Encounters are ostensibly random as you can't see which tiles will thrust a villainous skirmish your way, and fleeing can't be relied upon. I legitimately game over like 5 times before I had a decent run, and many times after.
Goku!
Battles can be long and yield very little BP or battle power, which is an all-encompassing stat responsible for attack, defense, and probably other shit. Characters level up at certain tiers of BP, increasing their health and BE, which I assume is battle energy, but BP in and of itself is the primary factor in combat. Most encounters yield around 5, and even the mini-bosses in the first map pay out less than 10. So, with a starting power of around 500 and a rough requirement of 1500 to defeat the first big boss Raditz, there is a significant amount of grinding. Contrary to popular belief, JRPGs generally don't require grinding. In most cases, there are alternate ways to make progress without raw number pumping, but as battle power is the only stat and items and cards can't close the gap between you and your foes, you are locked into hours of mindlessly expended tedium. Besting the same multicolored Cybermen over and over would be enough to do even my head in, and look, I can take just about anything a JRPG can throw at me, but not this. Luckily, the world map features a few auxiliary locales to break from movement and combat. Alongside a healing house and contextual flight panels that make no sense, there's also 3 different kinds of training you can do, 2 of which are based almost entirely on luck. The most valuable method is a simulated skirmish where your battle power is halved and shared with a clone who you slap until someone falls over. If you topple the doppelganger, you're rewarded with a decent yield, however this can only be partaken by a single character at a time. So while you can't die or game over, the effectiveness is effectively halved, making it more or less the same as random encounters, though far less risky. The other 2 minigames are luck-based, both require you to match or best a randomly drawn card with ones from your own play area, or hand, or whatever you want to call it. One features a rock-pushing visual and ends after 5 rounds, where the other game goes on forever. And with a hefty use of save states, this is what'll get you through the grind. I'm not a cheater, I don't cheat, but if someone can convince me there's value to physically grinding through it and not exploiting emulation, I'll go back and do it the proper way. Actually, no, fuck that, I won't. The minigame that goes on forever also scales with your level, keeping the BP yield viable for higher level characters, which is a swell treat, as without save states you won't get far. So, after I spent hours getting Goku and Piccolo to 1500 battle power and cleaning up Raditz, the game makes me control the 6 living Z-Fighters, demanding they be split into groups of 2 to take down the evil menace that is Garlic Jr. Everyone who joins after this point has a lower BP than Goku and Piccolo pre-grind, and there's 5 of them instead of just 2. Luckily, these scenarios only required about 1000 battle power to pass, and once that's cleared, they all form together into a single world map character, which represents all 6 boys who storm Garlic Jr.'s castle. It's here where the game truly comes into its own, with less time-consuming movement, combat with a full party, and a BP yield which can go as high as 50 per random encounter, to which all party members are recipients. The relatively small amounts of additional grinding doesn't kill all enjoyment as it does before this. It's not great, but it's playable now. Through these side scenarios, the game will occasionally cut back to Goku participating in his training, wherein all of his segments function like Gokuuden, with straight paths full of BP increasing events. I don't mind these sections being presented in this way, as the game isn't based solely around them, and they're short, snappy, and used to get Goku up to par with the rest of your crew. And it's better than fighting thousands of Cybermen. Then arriving on King Kai's planet, you perform the Gregory Bubbles capture minigames, which also pay out stupid amounts of BP. These are similar to the training bonus minigames, but you get multiple attempts with cumulative results, which, even factoring in bad luck, make it entirely achievable. After this, it's a straight shot to the end. The 6 non-Gokus beat a group of Cybermen, Kakaroto shows up during the Nappa fight, giving you 7 total battle bros and a guy with stupidly high battle power. Then Vegeta's last and the game ends. Despite being a fairly strict retelling of the story events, there are a few elements players have real control over, such as characters' lives. For example, Goku can die against Raditz in combat, but he can also not die, after which Kami informs him that to gain appropriate power, he'll need to kill himself. Now, during the assault of the Saiyans, everyone can be kept alive as well, and you might be wondering how the narrative progresses if Piccolo never dies, and what would prompt Vegeta to head to Namek if the Earth Balls were still intact? These are both great questions. While the game is quite generous in how much mortal control the player is given, this feature has 2 sides, as if any character dies at any time, they are dead for good and cannot be revived. Obviously, certain fellas biting the dust at an inopportune moment results in a game over, but I lost Yamcha long before the Saiyans arrived and the game just let me carry on. I guess it doesn't get too hung up on dead weight. I said earlier that BP is the primary combat decider, and while that's true, it's not the whole show. Naturally, in combat, you can take up to 5 actions per turn, 1 for each active character in your party. When you're rocking more than 5 guys, you have to exclude some, and only the guys in active combat can receive damage, which is kinda cool. Backbench the Krillins to protect them from an untimely death, just like the show. Cards have an attack and defense value which can shift damage around, but not by a lot. Each character has a special symbol that when selected grants them extra damage, and one sequence of squiggles allows the use of key attacks, but outside of that, they all seem interchangeable. Battle power and a high star value are still the best metrics for measuring success. Against most of the bosses, if my characters hit, they do pathetic dribbles of damage. It was only when Goku returned against those pesky Saiyans and committed to using Ki Blast where I'd see anything above single digits. Most connected hits would do around 10 damage if I were lucky, but Goku's beams would do well over 100, so the strat is to recharge BE with items and spam Genki Dama for an easy win. Sure, the trickles do add up, but they weren't worth the time it'd take to play the animations. Unfortunately, you're forced to select the maximum amount of moves per turn, which adds a lot of unnecessary time. What I discovered when fighting Nappa was that Kyoushuu is actually overpowered as well. He has a Ki Blast which paralyzes the enemy for an undefined amount of turns and leaves them open to a free full team beating. With a constant flow of trickle damage and the later bosses having stacked health pools, it is a huge relief seeing the portraits shift. When any character goes below 25% of their total health, their face sprite shifts to reflect the damage they've received, which was a nice touch. Just a simple, non-intrusive visual indicator. I love that kind of shit. Honestly, the game as a whole looks amazing. The sprites flit around the screen like coked out fairies. They shrink and expand to convey a rudimentary approximation of distance. There's scrolling backgrounds, and for a Famicon game, the sprites have a decent amount of detail. Just for the 2 of you who may not know, the Famicon had a low number of on-screen colours at any given time. From what I can tell, this capped out at 25, which includes objects and backgrounds. The sprites here look more detailed than the average title because any black on the characters, namely outlines and minor features, are not actually part of the sprite and are pulled from the background. When the screen flashes, you'll see the colour change reflected on these features of the character. You could point out how this is a clear downside to their constraint bypass, but I actually think it works to the game's benefit. After all, what title could better pull off a character rapidly flashing than a Dragon Ball one? This may have been a common technique, and I might be underestimating the hardware as I'm not super familiar with Famicon or NES titles, but I'm still impressed by what they achieved. It looks fantastic. And finally, once Vegeta's bested, you get character-specific passwords for use in the Budokai Tenkaichi mode, which would have been cool when it came out, but now it's just kind of like a pointless battle simulator. If nothing else, it's neat that you can use your endgame characters to battle your mates, but you've got to have friends to capitalize on this, which is a huge ask for a Dragon Ball fan. Dragon Ball Z 2 Gekishin Freeza, again Famicon, is an immense step up from Kyoushu Saiyajin. That's right, I've given up pretending I can speak Japanese. It fixes the slow gameplay, the scattered, aimless approach to progression, the immense amounts of grinding, and strings narrative events back to back, keeping a more engaging pace. We opened with ignoring the canonical discrepancies from the former title, stating that Piccolo died, which has been debunked numerous times by many experts. Maybe Kami asked him to kill himself as well. Once we get to the actual game, shit's mixed up. It looks a lot like Gokuuden, but with the late game party system from Kyoushuu Saiyajin, and that's exactly what it is. You start in the spaceship on the way to Namek, travelling a mostly linear path with your boys Gohan and Krillin. And Yamcha, Tien, and Chiaotzu. Okay, maybe it's a little bit loose on those canonical discrepancies. Not unlike Gokuuden, you move with card values, and upon landing on a square are presented a selection of face-down cards. Any given card can contain a battle, an event such as an asteroid, free healing, more cards, etc. A Freezer face starts a random encounter, each yielding 100 battle power clean, and with starting values of around 1500 BP each, it's nowhere near as difficult to acquire said power, but this is a necessity as the game is fundamentally different. Where Kyoushuu Saiyajin was an open game you were free to explore at your own pace, Gekishin Freeza is a controlled rapid-fire experience. The flight to Namek is a single path wherein you can only move forward, and upon landing, every open map has a time constraint to it. You are always given an objective of arriving at a certain place, and within each map are enemies who make their own movements. If they arrive at these points of interest first, well, I don't really know what happens because I never let it happen, but I assume you either get a game over or something goes wrong later on, as you generally get a Dragon Ball from arriving early, and you kinda need those to bring Piccolo back. You know, even though the rumors of his death were greatly exaggerated. There's a scene where you have to control Dende on the map and Nail in combat, where the Green Warrior has to survive Frieza long enough for our little healer to make it to the boys. Another allows you to flee from Frieza for some last minute training in Goku's spaceship, and as long as the Pale Tyrant is moving towards you, power grinding is on the cards. Movement comes in two flavors, walking and flying. The walk command can't go over adverse terrain, but fly can bypass anything and adds 4 spaces to your movement value, but I don't think there's a drawback to using it, which kind of begs the question of why is there 2? You don't have to use walk, but you do have to use fly as Namek contains a lot of water. It's a non-issue, but it is strange and makes me feel like I missed something. Maybe it weights event values, like there's a higher chance of getting random encounters while airborne, I truly don't know. While there isn't a lot of room to fuck ass around, it's never demanded and is far more cohesive than the former title. There are certain choices to be made by the player which will shift narrative events slightly, such as in a map where you can choose to fight Kui, Zarbon, and Dodoria, or whether you decide to chase the Ginyu Force individually or tackle them all at once. But overall, there's not a lot that can go wrong, and it's pretty fun. The string of Freezer fights at the end pushed it a little bit, but if you prepared your Goku well enough, it's not that bad. In addition to the flow and execution being significantly quicker, there's also an option for auto battle, wherein the game poorly picks each character's cards and respective targets. It's definitely suboptimal, but a neat addition nonetheless. Sometimes you just don't want to select 5 cards in a sequence. If you do choose to select cards though, picking a fella's power card will offer you a choice between attacking all enemies or doing a special powered up beam melee combo on a single enemy. This is a much better choice than just a slightly stronger punch like in the last game. Low health has also been switched up and no longer prompts a shift in portrait, instead substituting a bit of text as the weakness indicator. I was a bit bummed by this at first, but the number of sprites in this title is significantly more than the former, so it sucks that it's gone, but I understand. Another thing that's buggered off is permadeath. I don't know where it went, but my Yamcha took a hell of a beating and got back up each time after his health slowly regenerated. This can be sped up with healing items, and once your health is at full again, you can re-enter battles. The removal of severe consequence was appreciated, as it's very easy to get fuckled upon and has allowed failure to give you a unique experience wherein you can suppress the primal urge to save scum, or perform impromptu renovations on your office walls. Training minigames aren't as prevalent, which helps, and items are powerful and plentiful, as you've almost always got a reusable heal in your inventory, with senzu beans paying out like canonical anomalies. There are a few issues which can fuck you, such as enemies selecting cards when they move. If they draw a Goldo, you lose a turn, and this can make some close calls with arriving at your destination on time. I remember getting Goldo'd like 3 turns in a row once. I was fuming. Also, in the lead up to fighting Freeza, I was trying to get a few extra battle power, and his henchmen kept fleeing because I had one dude who was marginally stronger than them. When a game's pacing is so tight that you're given little chance to freely power, this was a bit unfair. That said, the game's not shy about giving away power, as Guru arbitrarily boosts everyone up about 20,000 BP, which at the time is huge, and you're given ample bullshit power-ups and training opportunities. Also, Vegeta joins as a Phantom 6th character, and while never controllable, would aid the party once per turn, giving you a total of 6 attacks instead of 5. I think my biggest criticism would have to be that they fixed the Chiaotzu cheese, meaning that I had to actually fight tough enemies. If it's good enough for Stunlock and Vegeta, it's good enough for anyone. Also, the game looks even better than the former title, somehow, and upon ending, you're given your Budokai Tenkaichi codes once again. For battle with those friends, I'm sure you'll make one day. Just keep at it, sport. People who appreciate you are out there. I promise. We're jumping ahead to the Super Famicom now with Dragon Ball Z Super Saiya Densetsu, which is a remake of Kyoushuu Saiyajin and Gekishin Freeza, though it tastes a bit bland this time around, and I think that's due to a lack of garlic. There's also no illusory Saiyans, and the traversal sections are either fully cutscenified or relegated to training minigames, which does suck, but it's not too far removed from the original. Instead of being confined to a grid, Super Saiya Densetsu plays more like a standard RPG with free movement and traditional random encounters based on step count, or fly count. There is variance in movement, as events on the ground require the player to walk, but most traversal's done through flight, as the walk speed is painfully slow and, water. There is a toggleable Dragon Dash which increases speed, but possibly also increases encounter rate. It's so sporadic it was hard to tell. Encounters either happen too rapidly or are so spread out you could clear entire maps before seeing a group of enemies. It's very strange. Houses are scattered throughout the terrain and serve all sorts of purposes, but are visually coded. Plain huts contain NPCs and occasionally events. Brick houses are stores, ones with the white shaft and the grey glands are healing huts, and the spike-tip shelters are training rooms. Training has been changed from an intrusive mandatory addition to more of an auxiliary optional inclusion. Where Kyoushuu Saiyajin practically required blunt trauma grinding in these minigames and Gekishin Freeza heavily encouraged it, the training in this game is complementary. There are 2 kinds, one where you fight enemies for Zenny, the in-game currency, and the other where you mash face buttons fast enough to break a rock, which permanently increases your ki. These are both unnecessary, as level ups give more than enough ki to use techniques, and card items are paid out from random encounters and can be sold for Zenny. But how would we know it's a remake without a blatant callback that doesn't quite fit? Exploration of maps is edge-based, where in the former titles you could scroll to the ends of the earth during your turn for a sneaky peek at the competition. The camera in Super Saiya Densetsu is character-centered. There's also no minimap, which isn't a deal-breaker. It pigeonholes movement into shuffling around the edges of a continent and trying to distinguish one samey landmark from another, but there is an element of exploration versus the board game feel of the other titles. It strives for a different feel, and despite the repetitious map design, I'd say it achieves it quite well. The Dragon Radar can be used to ping a vague location of where the balls are if you get lost in the early game, though once the balls are removed from play, this is useless and takes up an inventory slot. The maps aren't exactly gigantic, but they're not small either, and I relied on it quite a bit, though the endgame becomes a bit of a toss-up as to where you're needed at any given time. This only becomes an issue with the annoyance of sporadic encounters, as endgame you're going to be one-shot and fodder foes and nearing the level cap anyway, making them pointless. Speaking of, combat is quite similar to the source material, though it has some smaller discrepancies. You still select cards and take turns punching on, but aren't required to use all your party members in a single turn, and can end your selection with as low as one guy. Naturally, he will be vulnerable to the entirety of the enemy's focus, putting him in severe danger, but the option is nice. These special symbols no longer allow you to choose between attacking every enemy or a single target stronger attack with a cool animation, as it now defaults to attacking everyone. The Super Nintendo version has a much larger focus on follow-up attacks though, which seem to be entirely random, and I don't know why they do it, but following an attack, the boys charge at their foes to do some additional damage. It seemed that regardless of battle power or star count on the cards, they'd almost always do it, especially later in the game, and it frequently had a higher hit rate and better damage output than regular attacks. Combat is far easier than the Famicom titles. I feel like I don't even need to say that. I rarely felt like I was at risk of losing, with characters healing upon leveling up and fleeing being basically guaranteed. Every time a flee command fails, each of your cards loses 1 star, but you can endlessly spam it until it either works or all your cards hit 1 star. After which, your opponents are given a free turn to beat your ass, so as long as you can reroll your cards before the next encounter, there's minimal risk. You're also given a free heal throughout most of the game, as when you save Dende, he can be used in and out of battle for free healing. I was worried that his inclusion in combat would make him a target as his health is low, but this isn't the case. Making it easier with a free heal per turn really goes to show the shift in design focus between the two systems. It seems like the NES games were a case of, I'm just glad this game runs, where the Super Nintendo was an effort to capture the success of a standard JRPG experience. Though the face tiles no longer show damaged combatants, once a character passes 10,000 battle power, they get a glowing aura when performing actions in combat, which is a nice touch. The game looks great overall. Combat has more animations, obviously being on a more powerful system, you can create more detail and movement and colour. I do miss the tiny warped characters floating around the arena like angry little flies, but the art direction seems a lot more focused, or achievable in this version. The Dragon Ball story hasn't changed in 40 odd years, so you won't find anything too different here, though there are a few noteworthy additions. For starters, Raditz hides out in a bunker through a small cave, which features a clone of himself at the end just before his boss fight. Hitting level 4 through grinding will immediately teleport you to the beautiful Saiyan, skipping this entirely. I dig the intent of not allowing you to overlevel and keeping some sense of challenge, but I always miss items and events because I'm too busy power grinding, so I'm conflicted. If this were an option for every major foe, giving a hard time limit for particular encounters, as well as harkening back to Gekishin Freeza, that would have been a welcome addition. Though at the risk of losing out on the freedom offered, maybe not. The training between Gohan and Piccolo is shown through the standard combat system, as is Goku's training on King Kai's planet, just like in the original. Then the Saiyans arrived, and you're given the choice of either rounding the boys up or arriving with Gohan and Piccolo as the boys are being killed by Nappa. If you collect each of them in a timely manner and keep them alive during the fight, they make their way to Namek with you. Everyone but Piccolo can survive this fight because they canonized his death this time. Nappa's not too tough, but Goku rocks up almost immediately, and as you only need to select one character to perform an action, it's very easy to keep them alive. Then Goku and Vegeta fly off to fight a solo battle, but between rounds of combat, you're given control of Gohan and the crew who can fly after them. At the end of every random encounter, we're flashed back to the brawl between the Saiyans, but if you arrive before Goku or Vegeta get smoked, the boys will join in battle. Though they're not much help, as Vegeta can kill any non-Goku in a single hit. This fight can also vary widely, as there's a card called Full Moon which will turn Gohan into a monkey and increase his battle power exponentially, but Vegeta too can also chimp out, which is not so good. While in his monkey form, Krillin can hit that sick Destructo Disc and cut his tail, which reverts him back to the regular Vegeta. This is all wholly optional though. I had to do multiple playthroughs just to get it to happen so I could showcase it for the video. Whoever survives this kerfuffle gets a one-way ticket to Namek. That sounds like a great deal. The variance in playstyle doesn't stop there, as one of the first things you've got to do is find a Dragon Ball, and Kui can be fought outside a cave nearby, but if you ignore him and push for the ball, he'll ambush you as you're exiting. Then you do the Dodoria Gambit, and these definitely take a little bit of grinding, but nowhere near as much as the original titles. Goku's up next with more training, and this seems to be almost entirely luck-based. You can pick the gravity levels, and I figured that card stats such as power and block would determine your success levels, but I remember hitting a Z, which is the highest stat on both ends, and still failing, so I'm gonna say it's entirely luck-based and move on. Fat Piccolo gets a quick burst of the same training before fighting Raditz and Nappa. It's a nice attempt at reminding people that Piccolo exists, without turning him orange. In some instances, Vegeta will fight Zarbon here, but if not, the event is seemingly skipped, and I don't know what influences it. Then we get control of Gohan, and we're on our way to get a free power boost from Guru, but not before the two Namekian friends I didn't use say farewell. Collecting some stray Dragon Balls, we find some fairy in a cave who tells us to go to another cave and press some switches, then we have to return to access Guru's hideout. If we don't do it properly, it resets and we've got to do it all again. It definitely fills the filler quota, so my boys are packing heat by this point. Even more so as Guru gives you 20,000 battle power for nothing. If the Zarbon fight was skipped, leaving the Guru cave will have Vegeta appear with Zarbon in tow, allowing you to clap the Sailor Moon reject with all your newly powered boys. Honestly, this is sick, as Vegeta should be your lowest powered, so you just get to smack the shit out of Zarbon. The Ginyu Force are up next, and you can fight them in pairs of 2, with Goku arriving just as you're fighting Berta and Ginyu, and there are probably other variants here, but I never got those. Then we've got a pretend Frieza guarding some Dragon Balls. We wish Piccolo back and fight the real Frieza to half health. Piccolo arrives and can either head straight to Frieza or fuse with Nail to get a bullshit power boost, which he desperately needs. Once Chunk Frieza's slapped down, he flees and you get a bit of time to grind. From here, Piccolo can fuse with our two Namekian buds who joined earlier, but it doesn't seem to do anything. However, Dende offers to fuse with Piccolo as well, which is actually a huge choice. Dende gains passive experience throughout the game as he's always in your party, and upon hitting level 3 can heal your boys for free during combat, so he is a valuable asset. However, if you fuse him, Piccolo's battle power doubles to just shy of 2 million, which is huge. This is where Frieza turns into a walking, talking footlong and hides behind a wrong-coloured Ginyu Force. Having a little tussle with him causes him to flee, and once every 4 or so random encounters, he'll show up as a fodder encounter himself, and that is your cue to deal as much damage as you can. After enough of a knockaround, he'll bait you to a specific point where he goes final form and nobody's strong enough to approach him, not even Dendekolo. Goku wakes up after 2 rounds and joins the fight, absolutely obliterating Frieza. With BP card increases and Chiaotzu dying in combat giving him his Super Saiyan form, he is unfuckable and will steamroll anything in his path. If Vegeta stays alive, there's a secret end boss which sees Goku alone fighting Super Saiyan Vegeta in space, which is a nice little bonus for protecting the sobbing prince. Overall, I'd say the variance in events is probably the best part of this game. Becoming more of a JRPG, it fixed a lot of issues, but we also saw the loss of cool stuff like the illusory Saiyans, the entire Garlic Jr. stretch, and the rush and tight balance of the time-sensitive maps. The encounter rate is pretty high, and come endgame most characters stop being useful, in true Dragon Ball fashion, but I would say ultimately, a successful remake. Now, let's go back in time to the Famicon series, because we're not done, and up next is the Android Saga, everyone's favourite. Ressen Jinzouningen, or Angry Robot Men Fighting, is certainly not the worst in this collection, but is easily the most disappointing. From the complete removal of battle power to the baffling changes to death mechanics, the content sucks, progression sucks, and the only thing of value is that Tien's still in the game, though barely. It took the strengths of Tyrant Frieza and turned them into weaknesses. There is no softer way to pitch how bad it shit the bed. Opening with the Frieza fight again, we bear witness to the new battle system, and while not wholly different from the former titles, there were detrimental changes. When I started looking for battle power, I was at a loss. Where is my BP gone? To solve this mystery, a post-Namekian Gohan and the fellas set off to find the Dragon Balls to wish the in-battle BP value back. Before we make any progress, I front with a hefty grind as regular encounters can easily kill us, so I power to a point where I'm not getting defaced every battle. Freshly ground and hungry for progress, the radar points to the first ball hidden behind a crumbly rock wall, to which Tien says we'll need dynamite to break through. Sorry, what? Piccolo could borderline blow up the planet at this point. Your shoulders are the size of New Namek. Why dynamite? Moving to a separate cave, we grab dynamite from a dog, then return to claim our ball. The second wish sphere is up, and we unfortunately discover that it's been eaten by a dinosaur. The goal's clear, we must collect some herbs and use them to create a laxative which will force feed the dinosaur to make him defecate. Whew, it's like 9 of my fetishes in one. I'm feeling euphoric, sisters. Once the dump truck is unloaded, the boys send Krillin to sift through the pile as he doesn't have a nose, and while that is pretty funny, we've truly hit a low point. The third ball is betwixt some mountains where a man stands guard, and to move him we must create a loud sound as diversion in order to sneak through, which requires us to head back to the dynamite dog and grab a second stick. After all, what in the Dragon Ball universe is louder than dynamite? That's right, nothing. It's crazy that 2 of the things Dragon Ball characters are known for is yelling and exploding, and we're outsourcing that shit. Another thing the boys can do is fly. Like over obstacles. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Skulking through the command room, we grab our final ball through the insides of another man, and switch perspectives to everyone's favourite edgelord, literally me. While he has no friends, he is handsome and powerful, and enemies seem pathetic in comparison to compensate for that, but without some sort of quantifying metric for power, it's hard to be sure, he hides it pretty well. I do wonder if the game ditched power levels to match the source material, as it's around the same time they seemingly vanished from the series and reappeared behind you, but, that's a bit of a cop-out. It's the third title in an RPG series, where the prior titles were based on visible numbers. Vegeta gets 2 similar maps in event progression and narrative weight, where the first sees him disabling a force field by destroying remote nodes, then clapping a blatant clone of Cooler's minion. We take a short narrative break to summon Shenron, where upon learning that Goku is still alive and doesn't want to come back, we piss the rest of the wishes away. Here, you can either get a small helping of experience from your characters or grow some Senzu beans, and this is one of 2 opportunities in the entire game to claim Senzu, so, you're kinda stupid if you don't do it. The harder you mash, the more Senzu you get, and it's actually quite challenging. I underestimated it and only grew 4 of the 5 available, though I don't think I ever used any, so it doesn't really matter. The return of Frieza and his father is entirely scripted, then we get the Goku and Trunks fight, followed by a cooler cock tease, and finally settle into Vegeta's second solo map, in which he's after a mysterious yellow power. Heading to Capsule Corp, he wants that 300 times gravity machine. Let's face it, the dick stretchers aren't working with Earth's pathetic gravity. But it turns out Bulma's been kidnapped by Cooler, so he heads off to prove himself. Our hairline challenge Saiyan is strong, but he's nowhere near ready for this map, so a bit more power grinding sees him drop a non-Cooler clone minion, and then we're back to the boys. Dr. Brief summons the 3 undesirables to assist Vegeta, and their next stage consists of saving kidnapped people to gain access to the base where Bulma's being held. This map is all grind, and after clacking Dore, yes, the real one, we arrive to find that Vegeta's already taken care of everything. This is a lesson for you simps. A Chad has already planted his flag, and you need to be realistic. Following this, Gohan, Big Green, and Goku have their training, wherein you select 2 of the boys, 2 cards, and then the game dishes them out small pockets of experience. The advantage to these types of minigames in the former titles was that it had bridged gaps without huge amounts of grinding, but here it kinda pays out trickles of experience, like barely anything. Even after you do it twice, you'd be better off fighting random battles. Now, we get Gok, Pickle, and Gohan to fight Cooler. I grind them all to level 49, which seems to be the soft cap for now, as to hit level 50 we need more experience than my total for the entire game thus far. Fighting Salza, you can go Super Saiyan in battle, but there's also Kaioken, which seems useless when you've got a far stronger form. Forms take 1 turn to activate, but the heroes also have a charge mode, which allows access to stronger beam techniques and might increase their damage. I only really used it with Goku to spam Cho Kamehameha at bosses, which basically one-shot them anyway, so I never really tested it. 1 turn is a big ask against generic foes, and you could realistically fire 2 lower powered beams instead of charging for the higher one, which would have a similar effect on fodder encounters. So I just never used it until the last string of bosses. It's a noble idea to want to heavily restrict the stronger abilities, but that's what Ki, your expendable energy resource, already does, so this seems entirely pointless. Salza's a bitch and dies real fast, and Vegeta magically gains his golden power as we smack down Cooler. Cooler is tougher, he can deal around 500 to any guy except for Super Saiyan Goku, who he only does 250 to, so we know that his BP is increased. But by how much? This title still fails to yield control of Vegeta, though I put him in my party only for him to get perpetually stun-locked, which is very fitting. Anyway, with a Super Saiyan Goku at level 49 and Chiaotzu spamming stun on Cooler, which works again for some reason, both his second and first forms drop really fast. Now, it's time for the arrival of the Jinzouningen. In probably the coolest map, Goku gets the heart virus, though he cannot if you get a different role. I'm not going to pretend I know how these games work, I am merely an observer, I do not understand their complexities. Anyway, with Goku succumbing to all those hamburgers, we've got 6 Z-Fighters split into parties of 2 to track down the androids. As you move, bystanders will clue you into their whereabouts, and you've got to slowly edge 3 parties towards their alleged location. I'm glad this concept wasn't fully abandoned. With a better difficulty curve and battle system, having a tactical Dragon Ball RPG would be the greatest thing ever, but it does kinda split the busy work like in former games. Once you hit the secret android sweet spot, an automated battle occurs between the arrival crew until the other parties catch up. From here, Vegeta shows up and it's a stock battle against Android 19. Once he's felled, Trunks shows up at level 40, though most of your characters should be close to 50 by now due to the sheer experience gain of former bosses. And if they weren't, beating 17 and 18 will push them there, yielding just enough to cap everyone and put Trunks at 49, making him viable. If you're short of 49 for these battles, there's a good chance you get in one shot, and even if you are at half a century, the weaker Z-Fighters can still barely take a slap, as the robots hit around 500 and, you don't have much more health than that. Either way, we're now up against Android 16, so I swap in Trunks and he deals so much, like almost one-shots this dude. Then Piccolo flies off, fuses with Kami, and has to fight Cell, but I get a card effect which doubles damage and kill him really quickly too. Then it alludes to Cell absorbing the androids and the game ends. You don't get the epic fight with Pickle and 17, there's no 18 given Vegeta the Broly experience, and it ends on the worst fight. Cell versus Piccolo, where if Piccolo would simply invest in sunglasses or close his eyes, Cell would have died very quickly. The player still flies around the grids with the boys, though they're visually present this time, which is a small feature that makes me not feel so alone. They snap to direction-specific locations based on how you move, which is a nice little feature. Another visual win is that the critical health portraits are back, likely because half of the face tiles in this game are just palette swaps of Cooler's minions, so they had plenty of room to double up for damaged expressions. Combat. It's way quicker, but Phantom BP still largely relies on exploding training minigames. The payout seems higher, but it's still very slow, and battles are pretty bland. You're either steaming your foes or getting steamed yourself. There are very few fights that are not completely one-sided. If your foes are measurably weaker, there is a sub-battle mode now, where it automatically resolves, but has these little animations of field sprites Dragon Balling it up with one another. While the traditional combat is mimicked and it's pretty sick, it takes so long I wonder if the core intent of saving time actually saves time. I figured it was safe and I could trust that my characters wouldn't just die against foes the game automatically battles for me with all stats obscured. This mode initially triggered because the game assured me that the foes were so weak they don't even deserve a full battle scene, but after losing my Gohan I went scouring and found that you can manually change the battle style. The game, or at least this translation, deems these modes 2D for the field skirmishes and 3D for the full-blown battle scenes. You can set it to be fully 2D or only 2D against weak enemies, as well as fully 3D or only 3D when your characters are in critical condition. This is a fantastic feature, and if the 2D battles were more predictable, I could see myself skipping combat for a large chunk of the game, as, since BP is obscured, I can barely tell what the fuck's gonna happen anyway. However, it's a pain in the ass to revive dudes, so my game was mostly 3D battles. I'd rather be manually responsible for a Yamcha situation, Standard 3D battles are faster than former titles, though I wouldn't say they're better, maybe more fit for purpose. The way characters flew around and engaged previously was insane. They disappear into the background and rapidly shift to and from the foreground to simulate Dragon Ball battles, but here it's all rapid-fire foreground focus. There's more physical trading and less a spectacle of motion, but it does save a lot of time. Is it better or worse? It depends what you're after. It's certainly less bloated, but at the cost of the wow factor. The buds in the back row can occasionally offer aid, but that seems like another random element. I will say, props for trying to make TN selectively useful though. After being given access to a vast selection of items in the former titles, it's pretty dry here, which is due to the reworking of secondary card effects. Cards are still selected the same way, though with the complete removal of items that aren't Senzu, the secondary effects now account for most of the things you do outside of combat in the former titles. If you roll a Shenron, you get wishes, which include bringing characters back to life as it's no longer automated. Certain characters restore varying levels of health or ki, and Mori, my Namekian friend, straight up doubles your damage output. This is another change where it's not necessarily better or worse. Items can be cumbersome and expensive to buy or rare to drop, where drawing cards to get a healing character portrait is relegated to RNG, so you're unable to utilize them as needed. Inventory usage can often trivialize particular moments, but rolling a heal card makes progression flow better, so, there are ups and downs to both sides. Outside of combat, their secondary effects only activate if you don't get into a battle, which seems wholly random. These are similar to combat with healing, dragons, and auxiliary effects, but they can also roll training micro-events. Training with King Kai is a roulette of joke segments. Correct pairs get experience and non-pairs don't, it's shit. However, there is a solid way to power grind if you feel the need, and that's with my boy Popo. He'll teleport in one of the 4 primary directions, and you've got to press the corresponding direction on the D-pad, or not at all if he stays in the center. It's way better than the luck-based ones, it's just unfortunate that it features in a game with little need for it. You start at level 31 with the cap being 50, and not only will generics and bosses get you most of the way, but the game's also easy, and without some sort of metric to measure your growth, you're kinda pissing in the wind in regards to intentional training. Alright boys, we got one more shot at a Famicon title that'll blow us out of the water, and it's got the funnest name so far. Honestly, the name couldn't be any more fitting. There was indeed Keikakku for complete and total Zetsumetsu. And now that we've all cringed just a little, let's dive into the worst game of the Famicom 4. I'm not sure of the specifics, but this title was developed alongside an OVA of the same name. While the video was released in twain, roughly a month apart, the game release was sandwiched between, with the intent for the film to be used as a visual guide of sorts. I have gone back to watch the OVA, and sections of the game are spliced in, even using the same credits, but I have noticed a startling lack of a crying effeminate lava dragon. We'll get to that. Popo rocks up to inform the boys that machines are spewing death-strong gas, which will slowly kill everyone by draining their energy, and Piccolo appeared. The machines are split up over 4 areas, so the initial 3 boys, Goku, Gohan, and Pickle, set off to tackle one each. Starting with Goku, we find ourselves on a mini-map with 4 points of interest. From here, we can visit Chi-Chi for a free heal, Roshi for game advice in exchange for pornography, West City to converse with residents, or the first stage. The way citizens appear in West City vaguely reminds me of the earlier Gokuuden titles, just without the charm or necessity. They have 2 lines, one for before the gas hits and a second post-gas, and I guess you could say it's world building, but I beg to differ. There could have been a point to this, but outside of Yamcha randomly appearing and giving you a card, there would appear to be none. Once inside combat maps, the gameplay is reminiscent of the former titles. You use card values to move along a gridded zone with random encounters popping up along the way. The 2D fights are no more, we're a full 3D game again, and BP never came back, but this time the dial's cranked so hard it strips every numeric form of character progression. Levels, gone, experience yield, disappeared, battle power, still MIA. How can we calculate our chances of success against enemies and how much damage we'll do? Well, we can't, it's a complete mystery. Even BE has been stripped, the only metric we can see or control in combat is HP. Transformations and manually enacted beams are gone, there's no powering up or character-specific kanji for extra attacks. So you might be wondering, what is in this game? Go on, have a guess. That's not a request, that's the game. Guessing. Characters no longer take an entire turn in a sequence based on their speed, but instead act individually as you're done carding them. Starting with 3 and eventually being able to select a full hand of 7, your goal is to give order to these randomly appearing symbols to produce special attacks. While they each represent a specific action on their own, such as punching, grappling, and teleporting behind you, certain sequences will grant powerful Dragon Ball TM techniques. For a basic blast, you'll want a hand kanji, followed by whatever this fucking thing means. The stronger and more iconic these attacks get, the more complex the combinations become, and I dig this system conceptually, but the heavy reliance on an RNG roll means you're only dropping these bad boys when luck is on your side, which is probably less than it should be. These Z panels allow you to manually select a kanji, so if you roll one, card selection becomes a backward puzzle of figuring out how to complete an attack with one wild card. It's a pretty slick system, but unfortunately it's mostly brute forcing sequences until you guess correctly, or mashing A and otherwise pointless training which reveals some of the combos. Alternatively, you can trade pornography with Roshi, but why would you do that? Granted, the game isn't hard and Melee will take care of most things in time, but this seems like a short-sighted restriction for more powerful techniques, when really, battle energy from the former games worked perfectly fine in stopping you spamming Kamehameha. Standard encounters give you cards, but that seems to be it, and they're not a guarantee, so I tended to run from what I could. The chance of getting more cards to heal wasn't worth the guaranteed need I create by engaging in them. Maps aren't huge, but they're far from small, and the boundaries are often vague. You can be scrolling, and instead of hitting a tangible or evident wall, you'll be told you've gone too far, despite the tiles looking identical to ones you can interact with. This is extra annoying given that diagonal movement was added, so you've often got to confirm which axis it's referring to. The only way to scroll maps now is to enable auto movement, which is a feature I actually dig. You're given free cursor movement, select a point to head toward, and then instead of manually routing your path each time you draw a card, the game does it for you. This leaves you to rapid fire card selection amid random encounters. As you're just one dude in the opening maps, the only real factor you can control is running away or using items. If you lack items or fail to flee, there's not a lot you can do. I was getting rolled by big groups of enemies I couldn't escape from and had no defense against. I guess in this way, it's still a Gokuuden game. It's so clunky, like I felt like I was missing something, but I think the intent is to give you space to figure out your kanji strings, which honestly wouldn't have even helped that much when you're flying solo. I just kept going till I got lucky and everyone came together 3 maps in. All of your power-ups in this title are preset and are either given for clearing story sections or figuring out the various attack combinations. I ended up fighting most of the battles I couldn't initially run from, just in case there was some sort of purpose to them, but the odd card drop seems to be about it. Items are cards which factor into the limited amount of selections a character can perform per turn, which also increase with story events. These secondary card effects are back, but healing and training only work if you land on a healing hut or a training tower as you select them. The fist can double damage in battle, apparently the symbol of 3 cards shifts your power values, and the boot either doubles your movement or prevents random encounters for a set amount of turns. Yeah, as a bit of an Australian, I must confess my love for the boot. The final card effect is Event, which generally gives you an encounter, but can also flush your hand. A neat inclusion is that with a hand limit of 7 cards, if you get one of each of the numbers 1 through 7, you summon Shenron, who gives you a picture of himself, which lets you generate 2 cards of your choice. This is the only reason I beat the final boss, who is a severe escalation in difficulty as I just farmed Shenrons and spammed overpowered cards. The story sucks. Goku follows a bird, then Gohan goes into a pyramid to play grab-ass with a mummy who is actually a child. Gohan, no, stop! What is that boy doing? Is he giving the mummy the cummy fucking... Trunks and Vegeta help fight Turles and Slug, then Frieza and Cooler, and then we fight him again, so 4 battles all up. Then we're tasked with finding the Dragon Balls, which is just landing on a specific spot and using the Dragon Radar as a vague guide. I know I'm like mid-rant about how awful the story is, but I actually have a severe weakness for Dragon Ball hunts. I know they're nothing special, but tracking down these orange orbs is one of those chimp brain things I will always love. It could be the most brain-dead filler content, but if there's a yellow blip on a radar and a wish when it's all over, I'm down for it. Once they're gathered, Pilaf, disguised as Dende for some fucking reason, wishes for us to be paralyzed, and then wishes back the island we were gonna wish back anyway, so we can get a rare metal to fuse into a spaceship so we can go to the Dark Planet. But not before we go to space and get a ring from a Freeza clone who's also a regular field enemy, but then we go to a fire planet and shoot through walls with a space pirate, and then we get a book to make a sea dragon god cry so we can go and fight the final boss. This section was entirely omitted from the OVA. I wonder why. We arrive at 5 narrow hallways, 4 of which branch off to a robot boss. Then behind the final is the boss's lair, which contains 2 encounters. Physical attacks can't hurt this guy, which forces you to use your beam attacks that you mastered on your journey, which he dodges half the time anyway, and then the credits roll. But wait! Hachiyak appears from behind the credits and attacks the Saiyans, just like in the movie. I didn't beat him because I suck and didn't farm enough items or get lucky enough card rolls to beam spam him, but I'm sure someone beat him at some point. Nobody likes Hachiyak. They should have just done the back half of the Cell Saga and turned it back into a proper RPG again instead of a randomly generated card guessing game that tied into a shit film. The Gokuuden series, at least for the Z eras, always seemed to release closely to the end of a particular saga, some titles even front-running the anime timeline. This was likely done to reach peak hype capitalization, and Zetsumetsu released a month after Gohan clapped Cell in the anime and several months after the manga. This shares a similar time frame to previous releases. It seems they couldn't turn the back half of the Cell Saga into a coherent experience and just kinda got creative, I guess. So creative, in fact, they produced one of the worst Dragon Ball Z games and worst Dragon Ball Z movies. Good job. The bar for bad Dragon Ball games is high, and by extension, bad Dragon Ball movies, but whew, this one's up there. And that is where this particular series ends. Famicon card loyalists would never see how they defeated Cell and how stupid the ending was. Luckily, other systems existed, such as the Game Boy Color, wherein they released one of my favourite games of all time, Legendary Super Warriors. A decade on from the titles we just discussed, card RPGs reappeared as it seemed to fit the low-powered handheld market, which exploded when boomers realised they could take a shit and play Tetris at the same time. Legendary Super Warriors slots into the late stage of the Game Boy Color, likely unseen by many as the Game Boy Advance was already out and everyone was getting killed by dogs in the legacy of Goku. Yeah, joke's on them. This game's playable. It consists of 3 core parts, though one is the overwhelming meat, with the other being smaller additions to contextualize the meat and offer some breathing room. Story sections are just cutscenes with portraits, and while it looks amazing, they simply took the entire story of Dragon Ball Z from Raditz to Buu and crammed the key points into these tiny text boxes. The second piece of this pie is the modest map sections, where you're given control of a character, generally Gohan, and can explore short sections for story progress and fun little secrets. There's only about 15 of these all up, and they're quite sporadic, though they serve a purpose. While at face value they may seem like filler to forcefully involve the player in narrative events and can be incredibly annoying, most contain alternate story branches which can have knock-on effects, or hidden collectibles which grant you characters and cards. For example, there's a point on Namek where Gohan's looking for Dragon Balls and inspecting Vegeta's space pod gives you a card based on a previous decision made. Following this, a Namekian attacks and you can dodge left or right. This decision changes the card you're rewarded with, and allegedly a few other intricacies. On repeat playthroughs, after you've unlocked all the secrets, you just want to mash through them as fast as you can, but for a refreshing break from the core gameplay, they're pretty solid. Particularly when you're rewarded a new character or card, it bestows power, it lights that fire to return to the core of the game. The meat, the core, is obviously combat, which is the only real gameplay. It depends how you categorize moving around small maps and reading text, I guess. Anyway, these are 1v1 battles between you and another Dragon Baller, and it's less of a card battle system and more of a predictive understanding of how the AI works and what it's capable of. You know, featuring cards. I'll lightly go over each of your commands, as despite rocking into battle with a deck of 20, you're not confined to or defined by it. That was a weird sentence. One of this game's largest strengths is the access to abilities such as limits, which are techniques you can use during a powered up state, and basic, which includes a limitless 3-hit combo and the option to power up. The powered up state turns the 3-hit into a 4-hit and allows access to your limits for 2 turns. As combat's turn-based, each character is either in an attack or a defense phase, with their opponent in the opposite. You switch at the end of every turn unless one character outspeeds the other, and then you can take 2 turns in sequence. I've never figured out if this was a bug or intentional, but I guess it doesn't matter. The flow of combat is dictated by CC or card cost. They avoided the trap of naming it card power. Some nice foresight. Cost is generated by dishing out or receiving basic combos, so if you drop a cheeky 6 hit, both you and your opponent are granted 6 CC. Or so I thought, but I took a 3 hit from Raccoon and gained 5 CC, and then later I guarded against him powering up and was just given 3 more. I genuinely don't know how defense CC is accumulated, but you get it in the defense phase also. During the attack phase, your goal is to build up card cost with basic combos of sequence button presses, then use your accumulated amount to send signature attacks to your opponent, dropping their health to 0. The defense phase is mostly burning turns, either using the guard command, which I'm fairly confident does nothing. I've been told over the years that it increases the chances of automatically blocking and dodging your opponent's techniques, but I've also been told the same of mashing A and B as you get hit, and I've personally never seen a connection. That's not to say it's wrong, I just can't find any info on it, and it seems to be schoolyard rumours for a fairly undocumented game. The second common defense phase technique is the move command, allowing your characters to reposition to one of 4 map slots. There's a physical representation of where each character is on the field, and this contains 8 total spaces, 4 for you and 4 for your opponent. You can manually move to any of these spaces, but can also be pushed by your opponent's basic attacks. Being in front increases your attack, with the back increasing defense, where being in the sky increases damage from beams, but being earth means you take more from physical attacks. When you think about it, this all makes perfect sense. If they're in the back row, they're farther away, so they've got more time to prepare, which increases their defense, but being in the front means your opponent has less time to prepare, so it increases your attack. I don't know if you've ever tried to punch someone in the air, but you don't have a lot of weight behind you, unless you're, falling on them. So that all makes sense, and I guess, I don't know, key energy just breaks all the fucking rules, I don't know. It's clear there was a cautious effort to make this part of the game impactful, as there's no way something that tight could be an accident. It's far from dynamic, as most characters are generally key users, so being grounded is more often better than not, but it's still a really cool system. Cards used in the defensive phase are where this aforementioned predictive AI reading comes in, as most characters, friend or foe, can only withstand 2 or 3 big attacks. So when they're sent your way, you either want to dodge or defend against them. Your opponent powering up is a good sign they've accumulated enough CC and are ready to drop a big stinker, and there are cards which can help you either endure the attack or avoid it outright. If you play nice, the AI will play nice too, where if you don't do big attacks without powering up first, they generally won't either. However, if you attack out a turn, the AI goes schizo and starts throwing shit at you with absolutely no tells at all, which is where the game becomes mildly infuriating. If you throw a random Super Kamehameha at Evil Boo, you know he's going to follow up with a Crasher Boo, and there's going to be no tell, and there's nothing you can do about it except try to guess when it's coming. The entire weight of the system is dictated by the risk-reward dynamic, which can be based on luck and guessing, but repeat exposure will reveal critical patterns to your foes, allowing you to roll the game. At the very least, you'll have the tools for an educated guess. Or, you could just cheese the game with Dabura cards, which insta-kill your foe if they hit. Characters that head into battle can be prepped. You can outfit your deck with any cards you like, but each character has a set amount of slots to put compatible techniques on for use when they're powered. Victory also grants experience, which allows you to boost their core stats. There's health, strength, ki, and speed. Health is health, strength increases damage type moves, while ki increases beam moves, and as most characters are heavily beam oriented, strength is vastly underutilized. There are a few characters who have some decent damage attacks, but it's mostly a beam game. And then there's speed, and I still don't know what speed does. Obviously it dictates turn order, and I've heard it affects other things such as automatic block and dodge rates, but I'll be damned if I can find any legitimate sources on it. This is another one of those things people have told me over the years, but random chance is extremely hard to quantify, and despite being fairly simple in execution, the info on this game is scattered and often entirely wrong. Stats can also be pumped with transformations, which are either unlocked as a result of story progress or by doing repeat playthroughs and clearing battles with specific criteria. Certain characters are simple to unlock, such as Nappa, who you just have to beat with Piccolo in his base form. However, some are cryptic and the game does give you hints, but even then it's iffy. For example, to unlock Gotenks and Vegito, you've got to mash start during the final end screen after the credits. One of the worst is Piccolo's demon form, where you've got to have unlocked Vegeta, a cryptic nightmare in and of itself. Then you've got to use his Super Saiyan form against Cell in the final battle, which unlocks 2 bonus future maps wherein you've got to beat 2 androids with Super Saiyan Future Trunks alone, and 2v1 is not easy. Then I think you've still got to mash start on the final end screen, I'm not entirely sure. Plenty of cards are unlocked this way too and have equally cryptic if not more so demands, but all you really need to clock the game is a Super Kamehameha and some high combo cards. With 30 core stages and 2 secret bonus ones where you head to Trunks' future, there's plenty of content and it showcases most of the major moments in Dragon Ball. They didn't put Raditz in though, which I'm still pissed off about 20 years later. As with most Dragon Ball games, some liberties were taken, such as fighting a Phantom 16 and 18 in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, but, overall it's pretty accurate. In addition to the story mode, there's multiplayer, but a decade on and you still have no friends. Also, you need a link cable. And there's a battle mode, wherein you do battle. This is just a string of disconnected fights outside of the story, you get experience, and then I think if you beat a certain amount, you get cards. The visuals genuinely sell this game, as it looks amazing. All the cutscenes are raw showcases of some of the best art on the Game Boy Color, and it kept many big moments with spectacular pixel murals. It is so impressive. It was actually created by Flight Plan, the developers behind the earlier Summon Night games, and while I've never played them myself, they look visually stunning as well. The game's dense, but to break everything down, we'd be here all day, and the video's already long enough, so let's go to the final entry. Harukanaru Densetsu, or Gokuu Densetsu, was the last Dragon Ball card RPG. How do we round the series out? How will it end? With a bang? Or with a whimper? Honestly, neither. It's very forgettable. It's like a loud whimper, but not loud enough to be noteworthy. It's like a creepily loud whimper that you don't really pay attention to because it sucks. For starters, we're back to the original Gokuuden style, just without the narrative context. So instead of a linear path to travel between points of significance, we're in a Budokai 2-esque board game where they make shit up as they go. God, I love Budokai 2. The story goes from Raditz to Cell, oddly no Boo, but do we miss him? Not really. With 3 stories to start, and a 4th once Goku shows Vegeta who the real Alpha is, the characters are ducked and weaved between as the story calls for it, with a shared completion percentage. It's nice that you can't just clock each individual story and are required to weave through them to mimic an actual narrative flow. I don't know why Vegeta was the 4th story though, outside of Zarbon and Dodoria, all he does is lose and cry. He loses to Yajirobe, Goku, Recoome, Krillin, Frieza, and Android 18, Cell multiple times, all while bawling his eyes out. I've never seen a guy with such righteous hair shed so many tears. Anyway, the events in each follow the source quite closely, but then you'll occasionally have to fight dinosaurs with Piccolo, and then you've lost the plot. Literally. With so many perspectives over the same encounters, the game genuinely didn't need filler, though it is fairly minor, so it's a non-issue. Some small additions were welcome, such as Raditz dicking down the Snake Princess, but that's a handful of dialogue boxes and never goes anywhere. There are also story-only chunks where you're given a brief bridge between one gameplay piece and the next. Interesting additions, but without gameplay there's no real incentive to view them as they're quite adherent to the story we've seen a billion times. Battles are 1v1 with a hand of 5 cards. The same rules apply to attack and defense as previous entries, with higher ball stars meaning higher damage and a higher number value meaning less damage coming back. However, Harukanaru Densetsu goes one step further. As battles are now 1v1, you couldn't just have soul trading back and forth, it'd feel too throwaway, it would likely be too difficult. So the character with the highest attack value is the only one who gets to take their turn. This means that if you have a big number, your opponent doesn't even move. Card types are Strike, which is attack, Training, which increases the defense value of all cards in battle. Energy increases all cards' attack values, Event, which is where your mates come in and do some heavy lifting, Hide for fleeing, Use for items, Reverse, which flips you and your opponent's attack values, and Z, or Z, which can select any of these freely for whatever you might need. These vary out of battle, with Strike doing something, Energy for a defense buff, Training for a power buff, Events for items and favors from friends, Hide for avoiding encounters, Use for items, Reverse cards which discard your entire hand, and again, Z lets you select any of these freely. I get what they were trying to do with energy and training cards, but you could genuinely remove them from the game. It's not deep enough to require it. Almost every time I used them, I was burning time waiting for a strike or a reverse. The player's burden is eased as they can combine cards, playing multiple per turn, but only if the attack or defense values are shared. So if your card has 4 stars and another card shares that value, you can combine them to 8, or 3 of them for 12, 4 to 16, etc. But cards with a 3 and a 4 for attack can't be merged, unless their defenses are the same. The defense combination is fairly useless in combat, but it's great for either milling shitty cards or repelling random encounters. After every move, if you didn't select the hide card property, you're matched up with a random foe's value, and if your defense is lower than their attack, you get into a battle. Also, these card stacks only take the action of the first selected, so no merging effects either, it just powers the primary. The RPG elements kind of return, as victory grants experience, and experience facilitates level and stat growth. However, the level bonuses themselves are shit. When you ding, there's a gachapon sequence where you can select a capsule to increase a stat or shuffle the capsule up to 5 times randomly. The stats, as far as I can tell, don't do that much, and most capsules give you more health, which is actually helpful. Stats are random, but because you can only level 1 of 8 things, this becomes an issue, as 5 of those things are useless. Also, if you roll a white, it says skill up, but nothing seems to happen, and black only increases HP. Honestly, the game's so simple, it's really just waiting for 2 kinds of cards, strike or reverse, or Z, I guess, so you can select strike or reverse, with very infrequent item use. All characters feel exactly the same, their levels and portraits make absolutely no difference, and every encounter is bloated, tedious, and easy. The only thing close to a difficulty spike is when you're given bad luck, and there's not much you can do about it. If all you're given is low-cost cards you can't merge, you can't do anything, so you just have to cop hits and hope you don't die. There was one sequence where you had to fight Vegeta about 8 times in the same battle, with very little chance to even use items, and no chance to explore the map for healing. Once you clap him for the 5th or 6th time, you're tasked with booking it to a space within 2 turns, which is 15 panels away. The first time I did this, the game didn't even give me enough cards to actually move 15 panels, so I got a game over and had to start at the beginning, which is always the result of a game over. The game's slow, so most maps take 20 plus minutes even if you're rushing, and the bigger ones can take an hour or more. It's careless design like this Vegeta map that turns a fairly mid-experience into a frustrating one, as slow, repeated playthroughs of a boring game rapidly become a bad game. I'd say more about it, but it's so simple there's really nothing more to say. And that's it! We're at the end! There are other Dragon Ball RPGs and other titles with cards, but these are all I'd qualify for card RPGs. Was that a convenient descriptor to get out of playing hundreds of other RPGs? Maybe. Dragon Ball Heroes for the 3DS came close, but it's not the right vibe, and there might be some mobile slop, but they're not games. They're awful by default. That's my review. Anyway, Tyrant Freeza and Legendary Super Warriors are fucking good. Go play them. Bye!